This video is brought to you by Raycon. Down to the wire. I think it probably goes without saying that this video contains spoilers for The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, so please be aware of that. So I've been playing Echoes of Wisdom, working on the review and all that good stuff, and, I'm having a good time. I think my review is probably going to be a bit more mixed than most, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And that's not what I want to talk about today. Instead, I want to talk about something in the game that just blindsided me when I ran into it. What's a big problem with Zelda? Nintendo does not care about the story. They just don't. They like to focus on gameplay and ideas first and build a story later. And I do get that to a point. I don't really want to go into the whole thing right here and now because you get people on both sides of the fence. Some people agree with Nintendo that it doesn't matter, and others feel like the story is an integral part of the experience, yada yada. We've been through this a million times. So let's just skip all that and look at the cold, hard fact of the matter, that by Nintendo's own admission, story is their last priority when it comes to making Zelda games. Going into Echoes of Wisdom, I did not expect much in terms of story. I was just coming off of Tears of the Kingdom, which left me feeling entirely disillusioned, to put it bluntly. It just finally hit me how completely they do not care about any of this and are entirely happy to simply tell the same story over and over again for eternity. And based on marketing materials for Echoes of Wisdom, I didn't really anticipate that Zelda's first solo adventure would prove an exception. Especially considering those dev diaries where they revealed that they really struggled with the story and came up with most of it in a brief boot camp last summer. I mean, on the surface, it really did just look like the same old story, only this time Link and Zelda's places were reversed. Everything looked bog standard Zelda to a T. Same old Hyrule Castle, Death Mountain, Kakariko Village, Ganon, Kukos, the whole gang. And I thought it did make its own kind of sense. Personally, I wanted Zelda's first game to really offer something unique to Zelda herself, but I could understand how there's also value in exploring how a new playable character works in familiar places and situations. It's Zelda's first game, but it's still a Zelda game, right? It can't be too different. So yeah, I really didn't expect much. And for the most part, it's true that the game is largely same old when it comes to story and theming. The rifts are a decently unique element, a little similar to the Dark World concept we've seen quite a few times, Twilight Princess being the closest match for this particular iteration. But they provide their own unique spin on the idea, and traveling into these rifts to dispel them and the landscape being all twisted and weird, it's a fun angle. But I figured the uniqueness would probably end there. Before we continue, a quick reminder that this video was brought to you by Raycon. Their new model of the everyday earbuds sports so many new features, it's getting hard to cram them all into one ad read. But I'ma try. They still offer the sleekest, most comfortable design you could hope for, and they're weather resistant and sweat proof. They sound amazing, and along with multiple sound profiles to choose from, they now offer active noise cancellation and multi-point connectivity for connecting to multiple devices. Then 8 hours of battery, up to 32 hours using the charging case, and now you even get quick charging and wireless charging? So little charging time means a lot more time gazing contemplatively at the cloudy sky while listening to Boards of Canada. And look at this cool case. They got all these super slick protective cases. I'm a big space stan, so I got a cool space one, and I don't even have to take it off to use wireless charging. The everyday earbuds are still half the price of other premium brands, and if you hit the link in the description or head to buyraycon.com/Arlo, you can get 20 to 50% off site-wide. Thanks again to Raycon. Continuing is now allowed. Back to the video. So it's like a week ago, with my very low expectations firmly pressed into my pocket, I start the game. And of course, it immediately establishes Ganon as the main villain. Snoozer. Yeah, Zelda finally gets a chance to stick it to the pigman. I get it. I wonder what kind of rift rod he's gotten his hands on. Betcha $100 the game doesn't even explain where it came from. It's just kind of there all of a sudden. No way it actually fits into the lore. Not with Nintendo. Sheesh. And I'm going through the game, and like I said, it's all pretty standard. It's the places and concepts and archetypes we're all used to. And then I get to the end of this dungeon. And Try is like, hey, this pig guy, I don't think he's real. I think he's an echo. And then I'm like, oh, okay, weird. But then who's been making all these echo? What is that? And all of a sudden, we're dealing with a new villain. That thing that, like, never happens. It happens! To us grumpy old timeline snobs, what's one really big issue with the Zelda series? It relies too much on Ganon. He's getting stale. If you're gonna tell the Ganon story again, you've got to give it a new twist. He used to be a man before he went pig mode. He's been in prison and just busted out. He's really a reincarnated entity. He's upgraded his pig mode to ultra pig head ghost mode. You need something, and that was the problem with Tears of the Kingdom. It did nothing with him. There was no twist, nothing different or interesting, even after all these years, even after Pig Head Ghost. He got downgraded from Pig Head Ghost. Messed up. No, personally, I'm always keeping my fingers crossed for new Zelda villains. Your Majoras and Vadis and Maladises don't come along every day, which is a shame because that's how you put a new spin on the formula. Giving us a new big baddie is a great way to shake things up, tell some slightly different stories, even if things do end up more or less the same way in the end. That's the thing about us story-obsessed folks. We don't want Hamlet here. We don't want Kingdom Hearts. We just want a little something, just like a little pinch of spice in that stew. And here, in Echoes of Wisdom, when I least expect it, Nintendo throws me a bone. I don't know what this spooky space blob who clearly needs to learn the nail clipper echo is, but it sure don't look like no Ganon I ever seen. But that's only the beginning. I keep playing the game. I'm cleaning up rifts. I'm hoarding smoothie ingredients I literally never use. I'm coating the landscape in beds. And finally, I beat another dungeon, and one of the goddesses drops me a line and is like, hey, I got a minute. Let me clear some stuff up for you. And she gives me this new villain's little origin story. Before the creation of the skies and the lands, there was a void. A vast nothingness. In the void, some things would begin taking form, only to be devoured by the one who dwelt there. The name of this one is Null. Null desired the world in its entirety and devoured all life indiscriminately. Okay, gonna pause right here. I cannot honestly say I expected a very beginning of the universe origin story in this one random cutscene in this cute little Zelda game. Wasn't on my bingo card today. It seems that apparently, before Hylia and the hero and Demise and the Triforce and even the creation of the land itself, there was an entity that devoured anything that took shape in the ether. And based on the words used, it seems that life itself sometimes took form and was immediately devoured. The world, as the story puts it, was trying to establish itself and was not allowed. Awesome. That's just awesome, for one. That is hardcore. We're really cooking here. This is already mind-blowing. But then the game decides to throw another little bone. Drop another little lore tidbit for us to enjoy. We three goddesses could not abide this and created the skies and the lands to contain Null. Come again? I'm over here like, I'm just like, I'm over here, I'm just like, how's a what now? How's a what? What was that? What did you just say? Let's read it again. We three goddesses could not abide this and created the skies and the lands to contain Null. Now, I'm very familiar with Zelda's creation story. Ocarina of Time was the first Zelda game I was crazy for, and it tells all about the beginning of the universe. The three goddesses came together to create everything, Din created the land itself, Nehru created the laws of physics and magic, and Furore created the land's inhabitants. When they were finished, they knew they were gonna leave forever, so they captured some of their essence in the Triforce, which they left as a tool for the people of this new world. Big mistake, it would turn out, but their hearts were in the right place. And all this time, we never even questioned why they created this land in the first place. We assumed it was simply because that's what gods do. They create stuff. They make worlds and populate them with people and curse those people to an existence of cyclical, inescapable torment. I mean, it goes without saying. But apparently, the entire Zelda world was created specifically to imprison Null. This shapeless, all-devouring entity buried even deeper than any of the other demon kings hanging out, sealed away here and there, going back even further than Demise, basically evil itself, predating literally everything we know about this universe and its mythology, all of its fantastical struggles, its eternal clashes between good and evil, has been an even more dangerous and even more mindlessly destructive force. Something so vast and so animalistic in its goal that you can barely call it evil. It's more of a force, a universal constant, which makes it infinitely scarier than someone who simply wants dominion, if you ask me. And everything in this universe stems from this initial conflict between Null and the goddesses. It was all created specifically to seal this thing away. Now, I'm sure they at least somewhat enjoyed the process of creating this land. I have to believe that they also simply wanted to create some stuff, because obviously they felt that things should indeed be created in this space. But it seems that first and foremost, this realm was built as a prison. And you know what? Maybe filling the world with life really was an afterthought, because then they dropped the Triforce on a bewildered and entirely unprepared populace, like parents tossing pizza money on the counter before heading out to do who knows what, who knows where. Oh, and they apparently left the Tri behind too. Yeah, along with the Triforce, how about some little Triforce creatures that we've never seen before because they just weren't needed yet? It's crazy, Triforce creatures! I went into this game all full of doubts, all skeptical and grumpy, absolutely sure that this would be hardly more than your standard Zelda game. But you know what? Sometimes you gotta stand in front of the mirror, look yourself square in the eyes, and say, I was wrong. Okay, maybe not literally. That kind of behavior does not sound like the mark of a healthy person, but you gotta own up to being wrong sometimes, and I was very wrong. When I read about that story boot camp, I assumed that it meant the whole thing was cobbled together as late in the process as possible. An afterthought more than anything, something perfunctory. But I should have paid more attention to what they actually said. They wanted to do right by the fans. They wanted this story to fit into the established lore. They specifically mentioned not wanting players to come away disappointed. And hey, maybe I'm reaching here, but I do have to wonder if this was at least partially because of the response to Tears of the Kingdom. Reception to the game itself has been, good to mixed, but I've heard almost nothing but negative things about the story. It seems that at least a pretty good chunk of people feel the way I do, that it doesn't really fit into the timeline or respect the canon unless you do mental gymnastics trying to cram it all in. Could the Zelda team have seen that response and taken it to heart? I'm certainly not getting my hopes up that this marks some sort of big turning point, and that from now on they're going to work a lot harder to please us timeline enthusiasts. But hey, one can dream. I do have to say though, story being the last priority will probably never change. Concepts come first, then they build the story around those concepts. They create lore as needed to serve the gameplay. That's what they did here. And I think it's absolutely hilarious that they basically had to fumble their way backwards into pinning down a story detail this huge. They didn't set out to dramatically deepen the Zelda canon. They simply decided that it was the best story they could come up with to support a game where Zelda jumps around on beds. This is easily the silliest Zelda game. It's got you summoning all this crazy stuff and beating monsters in all these wacky ways, and by mere chance, that led to the concept of Null. We got the nastiest, most dangerous Zelda villain ever. The deepest, most beginning of everything lore possible, so we could summon meat and throw it at moblins. And to end on a slightly more serious note, I also think it's really cool that Zelda herself got to go up against a villain this major, even if it was kind of an accident. Link's fought a whole lot of other big bads, but when it came time to fight something this big and this bad, Zelda had to step in and do most of the work herself. And I think that's just neat. Well, thanks for watching. Now if you'll excuse me, all this talk of beds is making me hungry.